This is a long story, but it's one that has bothered me for a very, very long time. I feel like I need to tell someone about it, just to get it off my mind, but no one around me believes in ghosts. So I can't discuss it without sounding crazy. This is a true story of something that genuinely happened to me a long time ago. I'm currently a 29-year-old guy living on the West Coast, and only recently have I taken interest in anything paranormal again. I used to be very into the topic of ghosts when I was a kid. However, there was something that happened when I was just 17 that scared me so badly I steadfastly avoided anything paranormal until now. It's been 12 years since that day, and only now, after over a decade of no ghost sightings at all, do I feel like I can finally talk about it. When I was 17, I worked for a small business in a very small town of only a few thousand people in the Midwestern US. The business was on the town square, on the second floor of a 2-story brick building that was constructed close to 100 years ago. The bottom floor was a furniture store, and the only way to gain access to the second floor was past a dead-bolted glass door with a thick steel frame and up a long straight flight of stairs. I taught self-defense classes part-time, which isn't a bad gig when you're a teenager. The head instructor lived over an hour away, so it was up to me to teach one night a week, and occasionally open the place up for the night before anyone arrived for class. Additionally, I was also required to clean the building at least once a week on our off days, which wasn't difficult as I usually only had to run the vacuum and clean the windows and mirrors. Opening the front door required turning the key in a very, very old deadbolt lock, which would occasionally stick and would only open with a very loud clicking sound. One day I stopped by work on an off day on the weekend with my girlfriend so we could clean the place. Just so no one saw my car parked outside and assumed there was a self-defense class being held that night, I locked the door from the inside by turning the deadbolt and loudly clicking it into place before walking up the long flight of stairs. Working together, we vacuumed the floors and made quick work of the place. Because we were two hormonally crazed teenagers that rarely had any alone time, of course, we took a moment to get busy on the floor while we stayed there. Unprofessional, I know, but it's not like there was anyone there. The town square was deserted outside since it was the weekend and all the businesses were closed. Besides, I had made sure the front door was locked, and the only other person with a key to the particular lock was my boss, who wasn't even in the same town. Afterwards, I walked to the bathroom, which was located in the back of the building. On my way back to the front of the building, while I was walking directly in front of the stairs, I heard something. I heard a man's slow, heavy footsteps coming up the long flight of stairs at the front of the building. My first instinct was to turn and run since I was stark naked at the time, and clearly wasn't expecting visitors. However, the second thought I had was that it was impossible. I had locked the front door myself. It was an old deadbolt lock that barely worked, and besides, I would have heard a loud, resounding click if someone had unlocked the door. Against my better judgment, my burning curiosity had me taking a step forward. I had to see what was making the sound. I just had to. If nothing else, simply looking down the empty flight of stairs and seeing nothing would help me understand that I merely imagined the noise, and that, of course, was nothing there to make it. However, as I thought all of this, the footsteps continued, and continued to get louder as I walked closer to the noise. Then I saw it. It was a humanoid shadow. A solid, substantial shadow was climbing the stairs. This wasn't a shadow in the sense that something was blocking a light source and casting a flat shadow on a surface. It was more of a person. Imagine a shapeless, formless human cloaked in blackness. It had no hair, no facial features, no distinguishing characteristics of any kind, but was tall and had broad shoulders. Also, it was walking directly towards me. Its head appeared first, followed by its shoulders and torso. Then, it was as if it looked up and was surprised to see me. I looked at it exactly where its eyes should have been, and it looked back for less than a fraction of a second before it jerked back, as if startled. And then it simply vanished, as if it had never existed to begin with. I blinked several times and walked over to the top of the staircase and looked down the stairs, expecting to see someone, somehow playing a trick on me, but there was no one there. Nothing. Just as I initially expected to see before seeing the shadow. It was just an empty staircase, just as I thought it would be. After all, I had locked the front door myself, right? Immediately afterwards, I walked back to my girlfriend and we quickly got dressed and left. I didn't mention what I saw, both because I didn't want to scare her and because I don't think she would believe me. I wrote off the entire incident as something I imagined, a bizarre hallucination. It couldn't be possible. There was no one around outside the building, since all the nearby businesses were closed and no one else had the key. At first I thought that perhaps the shadow was simply of someone passing by on the sidewalk downstairs, but the light from the front door only reached to the bottom step of the stairs, and it wouldn't explain how the shadow was somehow getting closer to me, as well as somehow climbing the stairs. I never saw the shadow again after that, but it didn't end there. Afterwards, I felt as though someone was watching me. Every single time I was walking into the building, I would have to unlock the place before each class, and I would have to walk the stairs in the pitch darkness, the very same staircase I saw the shadow on. I occasionally heard footsteps after that and felt as if I was being followed. It was almost as if someone was there, someone unseen, who really didn't like me. It was as if I was somewhere I wasn't welcomed, and someone wanted me to leave. Eventually, the feeling got so bad I didn't want to be there alone. I brought my girlfriend with me a second time, and she later complained that she felt like someone was watching her. However, during the day, it felt just like a normal building. The oppressive, creepy feeling started around sunset, and only got worse at night. Much worse. Around the time I graduated from high school, my boss decided the business was no longer profitable and chose to close the building down. While it royally sucked to lose my only paying job, I was very glad to never have to set foot in the place again. About a year later, I was in a new relationship and I told my new girlfriend the story of all that I saw in my old job. She was curious, so one night I drove by and parked the car directly in front of the door. It had been quite some time since I was last there, so surely it was safe by now. I immediately felt like I was being watched. Whatever it was, it had never left. It was like someone was standing at the top of the stairs and was glaring downwards with such unbelievable hatred and malice it was unbearable. My girlfriend immediately noticed it as well. She freaked out and demanded that I slam my foot on the gas pedal to get us out of there immediately, and of course I did. Even to this day, over a decade later, I still don't feel comfortable driving past that building after dark when I fly home to visit my parents. I don't know what I saw there, but it's clearly rooted to that building and either cannot or will not leave. I would like to share with you an experience I had about 10 years ago
give or take. I learned several years after this incident. What happened to me is what doctors call sleep paralysis. I say they're full of shit. I do not use drugs outside of caffeine and nicotine. I do not drink alcohol of any sort. So, this was not a hallucination caused by either of the two. Nor do I have any mental issues that I know of. Let's just make that clear. Going back about a year before this incident, at that time I was really into ghost hunting shows. I watched and recorded any and every show I could find that was about a team of ghost hunters investigating haunted places. Some were really good, and others just sucked. No disrespect. I remember watching an episode of... well, I can't use any real names, places, or addresses. Well, I remember watching the show where the lead hunter is a muscle-bound jerk who don't like bullies, but in turn is one himself. He orders his crew around like he owns them and they follow him blindly. I think you know the one. It's a good show, at least it used to be. Anyway, they were investigating a bar owned by an old country singer located in one of the southern states who wrote a semi-popular song about a girl. Everyone in the paranormal community says this place is truly haunted. They were down in the basement, I think. It's been a while since I've seen it, and to this day, it's the only episode that I will never watch again. They were talking with some guy about what goes on there, when up in the left top corner of the screen, there appeared a shadow figure, wearing a cowboy hat standing in the doorway. At this time in the show, they stopped the film and pointed out that when they were actually down there, they didn't see this figure and only discovered it while reviewing the footage. I was naive back then and didn't really know much about the paranormal. I figured it's a TV show. What harm could it really do? Boy, was I wrong. I now know that ghosts, entities, or whatever you want to call them, can follow you home from places and are made up of energy and can travel through any energy source they want, and one did. Now that I've given you the backstory to this story, let's proceed. Many years before this incident, an old friend of mine, back when I was 11 or 12, who I met through playing baseball in the same team, recently bought a house and was looking for someone to give his old mobile home to, which is where this incident happened. We had lost contact over the years, but unbeknown to me, he had kept in contact with my father. My father gave him my number, he called me up and made an offer I just couldn't refuse. A free trailer, just pay lot rent. Oh hell yeah, I'll take it. The trailer was old and needed work, but it was a good deal. I moved in, did some minor repairs, and a couple of weeks after that, I invited my father and stepmother over for dinner. My stepmother is what she calls an old soul. She can sense when things are just not right with the universe. She took one look at the place and said, "There's bad juju here. I don't like it." Every time she came to visit, she was nervous. She wouldn't sit still, always looking down the hallway. She eventually stopped coming altogether. She said it was, quote, too thick for her, unquote. Whatever that meant, I just thought she was nuts. I lived there for many years, had some strange things happen, seeing apparitions out of the corner of my eye, voices, cold breezes, etc. I just chalked it up to bad lighting, outside noises, insulation issues, some rational explanation, until that night. The night that changed my whole belief system forever. I was laying in bed, asleep on my back like I always do, when I woke up and noticed a black figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. The hallway light was on. I always leave it on in case I need to make a bathroom run late at night. The light from behind the figure showed it had a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs, but no eyes. It was just standing there. I blinked a couple of times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, and sure enough I was. Only this time, when I looked at it, it was wearing a cowboy hat. The moment I realized that, I physically saw it jump from the standing position in the doorway over top of the bed and land on top of me. My body became stiff, unable to move. Out of my peripheral vision, I could see my wife lying next to me. I tried to scream, but nothing came out of it. I saw the figure sitting on top of me. It reached its hands down my chest and started squeezing my lungs. I couldn't breathe. It was squeezing the life right out of me. There I was, gasping for air, paralyzed and unable to make a sound. Just when I thought I was about to die, a series of intensely bright white lights started flashing all around the room, like a strobe light on steroids. I closed my eyes to shield them from the light. It was that bright. All of a sudden, my body jerked a couple of times, like a convulsion, and then stopped. I opened my eyes, and it was gone. I was able to breathe again. I lied there, heavy breathing, for a good 20 minutes, too scared to move. When I finally got the nerve to try, I slowly moved my right arm over my nightstand. Still shaking from fear, I grabbed my phone to check the time, like I always do when I wake up in the middle of the night. The time was 3:48 a.m., the witching hour. Needless to say, I did not go back to sleep that night. I cautiously got out of bed so not to wake up my wife and turned on every light in the house. Every single one, including all the bedroom lights. How my wife stayed asleep, I didn't know. But thankfully, she did. I made a pot of coffee, grabbed my Bible, and sat at the dining room table, drinking coffee, Bible in hand, until the morning came. I must have smoked at least 1.5 packs of cigarettes in that 3-hour span of time. I'm good with that. I'm still alive. I asked my wife if she had seen or heard anything strange that night before. She said no, and I left it at that. I didn't tell her what happened, and I still haven't. She probably wouldn't believe me anyway. My wife and I stayed at the trailer for about 2 months after that. When we got the opportunity to rent an actual house, we took it. We packed all our things and moved out. On the last day, my wife had left a vacuum in the back bedroom where this experience happened. She asked if I would go get the said vacuum, and I agreed. Upon entering the room, a weird sense of dread fell over me, and something inside of me told me I needed to get out of there quick. I grabbed the vacuum, ran down the hallway and out the front door as fast as I could, slamming the door behind me. I then turned around and yelled, "You want this place? You can have it. I'm gone." My wife looked at me like I had lost my mind. My father and stepmother helped us move, along with some friends. My stepmother insisted that we drive all the vehicles that contained our belongings over bodies of water to block any of the bad juju coming from it. We did, and have had no bad experiences in our new house. Aside from a few bad dreams I had the first couple of nights we were there, about the trailer, but that was it. Well, that's my story. I don't really care if you believe me or not. I know for a fact it really happened. For a while now, I've been hearing about a phenomenon known as shadow people. These are ghosts, or visual illusions, I guess, where figures appear to move around rooms and houses, black in their appearance, of course, causing fear and paranoia. Perhaps it's when you're sitting at home late at night with the lights dim. You look to the corner and notice something moving, something unnatural. You see the outline of a figure, some kind of shape moving across the walls. Or it's something much more sinister. It's not like a phantom spirit harmlessly dancing about when the light is good for reflection. Instead, these creatures are insidious and even evil. They plot games to torment you, to trick you, to harm you. The shadow figures appear in your bedroom at night, watching, listening, even speaking. They cause doors to open and items to break. They creak your floors and cause chills down your spine. I've heard all of this and more, and I didn't know what to believe. This, of course, was until I saw them. Now, I'm a believer. I live in an older house. Naturally, it seems this is where most of our haunting interactions take place. Maybe you believe in ghosts. Some say ghosts are spirits left behind. They are poor souls wandering the earth looking for something, anything to take hold of. I've never had much luck when it comes to ghosts. Possibly for me, I just wonder about the purpose of these creatures. Why would a spirit wander the earth, caught in limbo between this world and the next? The whole idea of ghosts just doesn't make much sense to me. And then there are those who discredit ghosts. Spirits aren't departed souls left behind. No, they are something more malignant. There are no ghosts, only demons. Demons, by definition, are fallen angels. They are wretched, otherworldly creatures who prey upon the souls of the living. Their purpose is to maim, hurt, torture, possess, and kill. Over the years, there's been a lot of writings about demons, especially with the evidence we have collected concerning exorcisms, and the church, and psychoanalysis. Anyway, I mention all of this because recently I've come in contact with shadow people, and I'm not sure my recognition of them is good. Like most paranormal things, usually you're safer when you don't know they exist. I've made the mistake to admit knowledge to them. It all started a few weeks ago. At first, it was nothing major, really. Just a few bumps in the night, and what I believed were my eyes playing tricks on me. I woke suddenly after a deep sleep to a low but consistent thump coming from my living room. So I got up and carefully walked down my hallway. I peered into the room and saw splotches of darkness bouncing around. I made the mistake of raising my voice. I shouted, "Who's there?" Everything went quiet. And that's when I saw the figure, the shadow person. It was a long silhouette, like a tall, slender man, and stood still by the door. I just looked at it, and I believed it looked at me. For a few solid seconds, I just stared the creature down, and it didn't move. Then I ran towards it. I don't know what I was thinking other than maybe I could overpower the thing. It stepped back and I saw its full profile. My heart sank. The shadow person was tall and massive, bigger than I have ever imagined. It sidestepped me and then disappeared. I turned on the lights and scoured the house, hoping to find it, hoping that my attempts might cause a reticent apparition. But I was not so lucky. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I've had numerous encounters with this shadow figure. I've seen it lurking behind me while I watch TV. I've noticed a dark splotch hovering closely when I do my writing on my computer. Hell, there have even been times when I've gone out into my garage and I thought I saw it in my car, like it was beckoning me to get inside. But probably the strangest part of this phenomenon is that the shadow follows me outside of my house. I've read quite a bit about shadow people popping up in your house consistently, but very little about them following you. For example, the other day I was at my church. I volunteer there on the weekends and usually help out when they host late night events of different sorts. Anyway, I was there late at night cleaning up in our sanctuary. It was just me, everyone else had gone home for the night. I was supposed to put away a few chairs and then turn off the lights. Our sanctuary is like most older churches. It's an A-frame with massive pillars and a ton of space. I finished my job and proceeded to turn off the lights, and that's when I saw it. Lined up on the far wall were shadow people. Not just the one that had been tailing me for a few days. No, it was an army of them. My heart sank as I saw hands and arms and faces protruding all over the wall. In an instant, I was surrounded by them. Chills ran through my body. It felt like tiny bicycles were clasping around my throat and wrists. Everything in me went numb. I shouted and ran, but they chased after me. I started hearing voices too, coarse, scratchy, throat-like incantations that were swirling around me. I could only make a few words here and there, but the most consistent phrase I could detect was them saying, "Time's up, time's up." I don't know what I did to gather this kind of attention, but it's really starting to freak me out. Everywhere I go now, I see remnants of shadow people. They are on the streets I walk my dog down on. They appear at work, dancing across the walls. I'm feeling their presence more than ever before. I awake oftentimes at night and see several of them hovering over me. The whispers, they keep growing more consistent and louder. It feels like I'm losing my mind. I need help. Please, if anyone has any advice, please, please, please let me know. So, I've never actually experienced anything out of the ordinary when it comes to the paranormal or otherworldly happenings, but I do believe in it, very much so. I never thought what would happen to me if I ever did encounter something for the first time. I am a 23-year-old female, and pretty much the only one in my family who hasn't seen or heard anything according to this topic. But this, what I am about to tell you, I just cannot explain. I recently moved to the southwest of the United States and decided to rent a room in a nice home I found upon a hill, really nice view, and the rent was ridiculously cheap. So I thought, man, this is a steal, I'll take it. I met my roommates, got comfortable, settled in just fine. Everything was great. That's what I thought. A couple of months passed by, and I didn't take the house to be too scary, considering that the house was just generally abnormally dark despite the time of day, and I never felt a bad vibe. For reference, I live in a 2-story house, but opposite of what you'd think.
When you walk in the front door, you get to the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, and dining room area. You have to go downstairs to get to me and my roommates' bedrooms. There were no windows in the hall downstairs and no lights at the time. Now onto my experience. It was roughly around 5 or 6 p.m. that day, and I had just come back from work. Sometimes I happen to arrive first, hence being home alone for quite some time. My roommates get home at sporadic times, so I never know when they will be coming home for sure. Well, I was upstairs in the kitchen preparing something to eat for dinner while watching Top 5's YouTube videos, when I heard some faint footsteps ascending up the stairs in a slow manner. And I mean too slow, way too slow. Every creak of the stairs was elongated. It didn't help that I was watching these creepiest videos already, so I was way more freaked out than I'd like to admit. I paused my video to listen closer on the steps. I tried remembering if I had seen my roommates' cars in the driveway. But because I'm so used to my routine, I kind of just cancelled out being aware of my surroundings and couldn't remember. With the way the counter in the kitchen is set up, I only have to turn my head to the left to see the first few steps descending downstairs, and the living room and the bathroom. I kept my eyes on those first few steps, just waiting to see which one of my roommates it was, so I can just stop being scared. The steps continued until the head of this thing popped up. I couldn't see past their neck because they never fully came up to the first floor. It was as if they stopped midway only to see who was in the kitchen. This part is the one I can't explain and think about at times. As soon as the thing's head came into view, I noticed that its face was pitch black, like a void. I could tell no features, no nose, no eyebrows, no cheekbones, nothing. Mind you, the kitchen light was on and I still saw nothing. It saw me, and for a brief moment it made eye contact with me. Its eyes opened so wide and were so white, it made this spine-chilling, teeth-baring smile. I was stuck. My mind was drawn a blank. I surprisingly didn't feel anything but shock at the moment the thing was looking at me, still smiling. It turned around and made its way downstairs as slow as it did before. Only once it reached downstairs, I didn't hear any doors open or close, indicating that it was one of my roommates. The whole thing took only about 5 minutes, but felt so much longer. I didn't know what to think, and I still don't. All I know is that I could tell its smile wasn't something good. I felt it was letting me know that it was there, and that it will always be there. After that, I refused to go downstairs until my roommate got home. I stayed in the living room feeling paranoid at every sound. But I was not about to go and check it out like those dumbasses do. I didn't know what it was going to do to me, if it would. I gotta say though, to those that go chasing after things like this, you have balls and have earned my respect. 2 years later, I am in the process of moving out, and I have never seen the thing since. I don't know if it's attached to this place like a child attached to its mother, or if it just came and went. I still have no clue what this thing was.
And like I said, I have never seen this thing ever since that incident. And I pray I never have to see it again. If anyone has any idea what I witnessed, please let me know. Nearly 20 years ago, my family lived in a 100-year-old house in Idaho Falls, across from a church. It was haunted by a demon I called the Smiling Man. He had a gaunt body like a corpse with long limbs, a mouth full of rotting teeth, and the eyes of a dead man. He would walk up and down the hallways at night, scratching the walls and wooden floors with his fingernails, sometimes crawling on all fours. I slept in a room 3 stories up in the attic and suffered from horrible nightmares due to the Smiling Man standing in my doorway and hearing him walking in the middle of the night. My parents told me years after we moved out about how I would stand outside their bedroom door and scream and cry and beg them to let me in. My mother said that at first she thought I was making things up, but then realized something was wrong and let me in the room until we moved out. The house was built in 1907 and was previously owned by a man who kept tattooing body parts in pickle jars. And it had a dark basement full of spiders. Although my parents put my playhouse and other toys there, I refused to go down the basement steps and was terrified of even walking by the door. This is not a made-up story. This is 100% true. At the time that we lived in the house, I was 3 years old, but the effects of the Smiling Man would last a lifetime. For the last 2 decades, I have experienced and seen things that should not exist. If it was only me that has physically encountered these ghosts, I would write it off as my own imagination. But my family and friends, all very rational Christian people, are also affected. I suffered from nightmares and night terrors for 10 years after we left the Idaho Falls house, only managing to get them under control when I was 12. When I was 10, my brother and our 2 childhood friends saw what appeared to be the Grim Reaper in our neighborhood. After approaching the figure, we realized that it was clearly a spirit, and that it was indeed real. This ghost we named Danny, and still haunts my old neighborhood to this day. As a teenager, both apartments were haunted by a ghost named Steve. I would wake in the middle of the night to the sound of feet shuffling around the living room. I thought I was dreaming until my mother asked me one day what I have been doing walking around the house in the middle of the night. Second, the ghost knocked ornaments off our Christmas tree, toppled presents, and locked me out of the house when I had a friend over. There was no one inside, and I had not locked the door. At my Starbucks, which was inside a Target, I began seeing a black figure running around out of the corner of my eye. I nicknamed this character Wilson. Wilson tortured me for months, pulling my apron, throwing bottles from the shelves, and once even tossed milk cartons out of the garbage and spilled the remaining milk all over the floor. I was blamed for this and tried to explain to my manager
that it wasn't me. I thought that I was imagining things at first, until a new girl began talking about Wilson and described him to me. After that, everyone began to see him. He threw the ice bucket at my friend from a distance of 6 feet, opened and closed the heavy doors, appeared as a shadow on the wall, called my coworkers names, walked in and out of the back door in front of guests, and even whistled a tune. My coworkers reported that it sounded like a miner's tune and that they saw boots on his feet when he ran. I was curious, so I researched mining accidents in towns nearby, and one name stood out to me. William Wilson died 1905. The last ghost is the most recent. I moved to Utah 6 months ago and thought that for once I had moved far enough that the ghosts would not follow me. Lately, I have woken up to a strange smell, like chili or rotten meat. I have also noticed sinks turning on by themselves and things moving around the house, but brushed it off as my imagination. A few days ago, I dreamt that there was a ghost in my bathroom. Today, I was watching Sleepy Hollow, which is rather ironic because my hamster ball rolled out of the closet and across the floor. I thought my hamster was in it, but realized it was empty and fled the house. I called my mom, who suggested that I pray and ask that it leave. She admitted that she had done it before, and it worked. "What do you mean you've done it before?" I asked. But I already knew the answer.
"I did it before, a few times, in the Idaho house,"
she told me. For 20 years, my Christian mother has forbidden me to watch any scary movies in the house or talk about ghosts. I love ghost stories and horror films, and she wouldn't even let me watch BuzzFeed Unsolved without telling me off for inviting spirits into the house. Now she has finally admitted that they exist and that the smiling man was not just my imagination. I can't decide if I'm happy that she finally told me the truth. Ghosts and demons are real, and everyone around me is affected by this. I told the ghost today to go away, but right now, as I write this, there are scuffling noises coming from the living room. I have all the lights on and have been telling it to leave my house and leave me in peace. If anyone has had this problem, or have any advice or idea on why spirits like me, please let me know. I don't think any amount of exorcism will remove their attachment to me. But it would be nice to not have to run out of the house every time something moves. Thank you so much for watching. If you are still here after watching the entire video, it means that you thoroughly enjoyed this content. It would mean so much to me if you click that like button so more people can find this video. And if you are new to this channel, feel free to subscribe so that you will be kept up to date about new video uploads. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.